We are just completing the first draft of Chapter 2.
Presenting the second chapter draft of Murfreesboro's comprehensive plan to the community, planners focused on the city's growth capacity, physical constraints, and regulatory inhibitors to growth, everything from available land to environmental constraints, such as floodplains and sinkholes that hinder land usage.
What we're tackling in this chapter is understanding those physical constraints for sort of supply and demand in terms of land area and services.
Evaluating the city's capacity for growth is based upon population projections that Murfreesboro will grow by more than 100,000 people by 2035. Growth capacity begins with a closer look at available land, what's utilized and non-utilized.
From this map, it's fairly easy to see that a lot of the land within the city limits is currently utilized.
The map developed by Kindig Keast Collaborative shows what land is available for the increasing population.
The land within the city limits, there's a little over 9,400 acres that we are suggesting is underutilized. It's currently available for some level of development.
When land outside the city limits is included in the analysis, available acreage increases another 9,600 acres to a total 19,000 acres.
With which to accommodate additional development over the next 20 years.
Residential and non-residential development are only part of the needed acreage equation. Based on projected population growth, the city will need at least 500 acres for additional parks and 225 acres for 9 new city schools.
All of that demand is a little over 12,000 acres. Again, we only have about 9,000 and some change acres remaining to accommodate that land.
That projected growth will require 3 new fire stations within the city limits and another 175 police officers. Beyond the city limits, 51,000 people will live in the so-called urban growth boundary, requiring 4,700 acres of residential land, 1,400 non-residential acres, and 880 acres for schools. The county will require 4 additional elementary schools, 9 new middle schools, and 6 new high schools. Under projections, the urban growth boundary would still have 1,800 acres of available land. Consultants suggest one option to fit the projected population into available land would be to shrink the size of residential parcels in half.
If it's based on a quarter-acre lot, if everybody lived on an eighth of an acre lot, then you're cutting that area requirement in half.
The challenge of accommodating growth is further complicated by a number of environmental constraints that restrict land use. This colorful map includes obstacles to development ranging from floodplains and floodways to sinkholes and drainage issues.
This is sort of an overlay of kind of all of these constraints and hazards laid on top of each other.
Consultants suggest the city may need to develop a sinkhole policy similar to one adopted by the county.
There is developed land that may have a sinkhole associated with it. So development can occur in some of these locations, but there are hazards associated with that.
Some streams have reached their maximum pollutant load, restricting development near these waterways. The non-supporting streams require different drainage approaches that are important to water quality, not to mention public health and safety.
These are areas with drainage issues. And again, probably 80 to 90% of these drainage issues are related to a very complex karst system in conjunction with a surface water drainage system that is just not adequate.
Consultants are recommending that the city adopt the FEMA flood proofing guidance to help homeowners already in the 100-year floodplain.
50% of the drainage in the urban growth boundary goes to sinkholes. And that is not only an issue from the flooding perspective, but it's also an issue from groundwater contamination.
Consultants are recommending a number of strategies to address the environmental concerns, from updated geological maps to improved site designs and buffers to sinkholes. Water demand will also increase, but according to projections, stay under production capability of the water plants now in operation. However, there is a caveat.
One of the issues that comes out of that is allocation from the Corps of Engineers. Both Murfreesboro, CUD, and Smyrna are all pulling from the Percy Priest Reservoir.
The Corps is currently going through an allocation study that could potentially impact water allocation to Murfreesboro and Rutherford County. The comprehensive plan is also studying water flow capability for fire protection as the city grows outward. Strategies for maintaining adequate water supply include greater cooperation between the city, CUD, and Smyrna, reducing the loss of water through leaks and identifying alternative sources of water. On the issue of wastewater, the city or CUD might entertain the idea of moving toward an alternative decentralization technology, where smaller facilities in residential neighborhoods divert the wastewater for irrigation and industrial use.
So essentially the way that these work is that every house within one of these developments would have its own septic tank, and then the effluent from that septic tank is pumped to a centralized treatment system. Primarily they are recirculating sand filters.
The water would then be discharged into dedicated land applications, such as golf courses and playing fields, something happening now with the city's repurified water system seen in purple on this map.
And so a great deal of the planning moving forward from this point is going to look at how do we best manage this resource and treat it appropriately for the use, the best available use for that water.
Even so, consultants project that Murfreesboro's Sinking Creek treatment plant could require expansion by 2030, and the Midpoint landfill is also reaching capacity for solid waste, another possible inhibitor to growth.
We may be able to divert a certain amount of waste through potentially recycling, composting of yard waste, and kitchen-related waste.
All this planning may be further hampered by Tennessee's annexation law, a complex legal issue to be addressed in future chapters. These and other constraints will challenge Murfreesboro's growth, but with proper planning and wise choices, they can be addressed to allow for continued growth and development. Mike Browning, City TV.